Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about something that I don't normally talk about. This is going to be a little bit more of a lighthearted video than I normally do, so don't take it too seriously, you guys. But today I wanted to talk about the name change that Icathian Endurance has received, and why it is a terrible, terrible name change that I really want changed back. Now, Riot is no stranger to changing the names of items, especially when they're on PvE. We've seen this a couple of times before. The most recent example I can think of is Immortal Shieldbow becoming Crimson Shieldbow before it actually came out, and usually this is no surprise if the item is on PvE. Riot will oftentimes give us placeholder names, placeholder effects. Everything is subject to change when they're giving us their sort of preseason reveal and showcasing everything that they have going for them in the new season. And then it's no surprise when they inevitably change a couple of those things around before the items or whatever the things that they're releasing actually go live. We're likely to see even more of these as the PvE preseason cycle continues. That said, I am not necessarily very happy with this item change. I don't mind it. Icathian Endurance was the previous name of the item, and I think that that is fine, but not necessarily very empowering or very descriptive of what exactly I'm buying from the shop. I'm somehow purchasing the concept of endurance as it relates to the people of Icathia, right? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. But I think that the name they changed it to is horrendously bad. And in case you haven't seen it yet, the name that Riot have changed this item to is Jak'Sho the Protean. And it's bad for a multitude of reasons. The first of which is that the name itself is a mouthful. Most item names roll off the tongue very nicely. Crimson Shieldbow, Kraken Slayer, Stridebreaker. These all kind of have neat little soundbite chunks that allow them to roll off the tongue very quickly, and I think are very descriptive about what the item generally is intended to do. Stridebreaker probably breaks strides. There's a slow attached to it. Crimson Shieldbow, okay, so it is protective. Crimson, red is usually associated with things like Bloodthirster and that sort of concept. I won't necessarily be surprised then if it has something to do with lifesteal, right? Like, these are things that you can kind of sound out and figure out for yourself. And if they don't, they usually have a nice abbreviation. For example, Roa for Rod of Ages, or Liandry's, or Zhonya's for their respective items, right? Usually that works out pretty nicely. Jak'Sho the Protean is a super awkward name because it's an entire compound sentence just in and of itself, right? Trying to tell your team, hold on guys, I have my Jak'Sho in base. That doesn't really roll off the tongue very nicely. I really don't like how that necessarily sounds. Calling it your Protean, I have my Protean in base, is okay, I suppose, but in this situation, I would like for the name, the full name, to be moved down to the flavor text. That's right, this item has flavor text to it as well that helps contextualize the item a little bit, and I don't necessarily mind this. In fact, I would love it if every item in the game had flavor text, but I do think that the name of the item being in the full name is just not in the appropriate place for it. I also question the decision for Riot to give an item a Shuriman name. Usually, Riot reserves the two-part apostrophe names for full champions, or at least for significant characters like Xerxaret the Under-Titan from Legends of Runeterra, right? That is sort of an appropriate character to be getting one of these two-part Shuriman apostrophe names. I don't really understand why an item is getting a full name, especially when you look at all of the other items that we have in League of Legends, and things like Sunfire Aegis kind of implies that there's more than one of them, or Infinity Edge. It's not necessarily the Infinity Edge, right? In the same way that we have the Bloodthirster, which is the one and only version, and it is called Bloodthirster, right? So I don't necessarily understand then why we needed to have a specific call out for this item in particular. And especially because an item itself doesn't feel like it deserves that particular name. It's sort of, I wonder why Jak'Sho is somehow so notable amongst the people of Shurima that it has its own name, right? Like, if it is super notable, but apparently, according to the flavor text, it keeps killing the people that wear it, then why do people keep wearing it, right? If it is known, and known for murdering people, why do people keep putting this thing on, right? Like, it just doesn't line up entirely with what I think the names should look like. I also think, and this is more personal than anything else, that Jak'Sho as a name is like the weakest Shurima name of that sort that I've read. It kind of feels like someone other than a narrative writer actually created this name, as opposed to someone who's actually, you know, creates the lore of League of Legends. This is some item designer saying, oh, I know, guys, it's just two names that you slap together with an apostrophe, right? Not so much, no. Not unless you want something as bad as Jak'Sho. I also think, more importantly, that the name itself is misleading. Protean implies that the item lets you adapt or change based on circumstances, right? You are able to adapt yourself. You're able to be a Protean, sort of a formless shape that changes based on the way things are going, right? But that's not what the item does. This item gives you magic and armor, or magic resistance and armor while in combat, and when you reach maximum stacks, you drain enemies based on your maximum health. That's not really Protean. Now, if it was doing something similar to Adaptive Helm or Force of Nature, where it gave you increasing resistances based on a certain type of damage, for example, while you take physical damage, you gain armor, and then as soon as you take magic damage, it swaps over to magic resistance. I know that's not exactly very plausible, you guys, but I'm kind of riffing off the top of my head. Right, then it would sort of make sense for why this item is called the Protean, but it doesn't make any sense with its current stat setup, right? It would almost make more sense for this item to be called like Life Ender or Life Taker or something like that, because it steals a bunch of life from your enemies and then makes you really hard to kill. The upgraded Ornn version of this item is called Inevitable Assimilation, which I think helps contextualize the drain effect a little bit, but I almost think it would have been a better name overall, right? Saying, oh, I have my Assimilation in base, or I have my IA in base. That would make, I think, a lot more sense than calling it the Protean, and especially given that once it is upgraded by Ornn, the Jak'Sho part drops off entirely. It's just Inevitable Assimilation, not Jak'Sho, the Inevitable Assimilation, because that would have been even more of a mouthful. But again, in that case, why are we bothering to give the item a name? Just move the name down to the flavor text and say, yeah, the local Shreemans call it Jak'Sho, and it's this living carapace helmet or whatever. That's totally fine, right? But then it can just be the Protean that upgrades into Inevitable Assimilation. Or, better yet, create the full name as Inevitable Assimilation and then rename the Ornn version to something else. I don't quite know what. Maybe that's the Jak'Sho one, because then it's an Ornn item and no one ever knows what the Ornn items are called. But either way, I'm really not a big fan of the name. I'm really hoping that Riot rename it, but you guys love to let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you love Jak'Sho the Protean as a name, please let me know, and let me know why you like it, because I can't for the life of me come up with a reason why people would like this particular name. But let me know down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. As you guys can probably tell by my microphone, I am back in town, so regular content should be resuming here. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.